suppose we don't have to tell you twice. It's an election year this year, and South Africans will be spoiled for choice with no fewer than 49 parties running. Well, the road to the election could sway people's choices come the 8th of May. Professor David Everatt from the Wits School of Governance joins us via Skype this morning to give us a sense of what people, well, ordinary people like you and me, look for before making their mark on that ballot paper. Prof, a very good morning to you, and thanks for your time this morning. So 49 parties, that's a bit of a number up from where we were the last time for an election. Ordinary voters, when they get into that voting station, when they get into that booth, what are the things that they would be thinking about? And also the hours before that, I suppose, because I know of people who haven't decided until they walk into that voting station as to where they're going to make their mark.
I mean, I think there's an enormous number of parties, and it reflects at some level what we've been through for the last 5 years in particular, which were really that downward spiral. But I think it's also a reflection of the fact that people are trying to make their mind up between at least the top three, the three leading parties, none of whom are fully convincing them that they deserve their vote. And I think in that way, people are looking for signals from these different parties, from party lists and so on, to say, can I cast my vote for you? Can I trust you? And I think there's an enormous amount of mistrust of all the parties.
Yeah.
But really, obviously, the ruling party must take some of that. But there are ruling parties in different parts of the country. So I think it's an interesting mix. But I always wonder who the ordinary voter is, because all of us are, in that sense, ordinary voters. And there's no particular... The circumstances are different, but each of us is having to go in there saying, are we voting out of hope or are we voting out of cynicism and despair? So if we look back on the last 10 years, it certainly is one of a fairly gloomy, dark picture. But voters tend to vote on the basis of optimism, of who is offering me something better, something to look forward to. And I suspect that ultimately will be, in other words, do you go and vote for your own self-interest and how you think a party will take it forward?
Yeah.
Or do you go in there to punish a party for what it's done in the past? And I think that will help people make their minds up when they decide what they want in return for their vote.
Now, I was wondering, when you say that, I mean, what would be things that would be top of mind when we talk about whether it's personal to them? Would it be somebody who's battled to find a job? Would it be somebody who's had to give up their house and car because they've been retrenched? Would it be crime? What's the sense you're getting as to what are the issues at the moment? Will it be education? Will it be health? Or will it be everything that they would be looking at who's done what? And would it be a case of let's go with the devil we know rather than the devil we don't?
Okay, I mean, there's a few questions in there. I think it's all those issues, depending on who you are. The ones that tend to cluster towards the top, certainly corruption or anti-corruption, crime and cost of living. Those are generally at the three C's, if you like. They're almost always at the top of the list. And I think depending on which province you're in, different issues come to the fore. So in Gauteng, for example, health is fairly high given the Life Esidimeni tragedy. I suspect in other provinces, other things are top of mind. And I think those are the concerns that voters have. And so what they're looking for is which party sounds like it has the leadership and the plans to deal with those challenges. And that's really the kind of hope versus despair thing. So you have these horrible circumstances either in my life as an individual or my community or my city or my area, and which party is promising to do something about that. Bearing in mind that I think the ordinary voter you talked about, we should all start off acknowledging that politicians are just politicians and the bar is set fairly low. So I think our expectations should be set similarly low.
Now, we know that they've all set their sights on that young vote, Prof, and, they've been going all out trying to get the youth to actually get in there and vote. So what do you think will be the issues for young South Africans who will be voting, those for the first time and others who are just young? Let's talk about those who are probably under 40.
Okay, and it's that young nowadays. Okay, I'm clearly very old. I think the worrying sign is the number of young people who have not bothered. I say bothered, not in a judgmental sense, but have not gone to register because they've grown up not in the era that perhaps certainly I did and perhaps you did, which was politics can change your life. Politics is a good thing. There are leaders we can trust. who kind of gave everything in their lives for this, and therefore voting was almost a moral and civic duty. I think young people have grown up in an era of very cynical politics, of, as we've seen, appalling levels of corruption, malfeasance, lack of concern for human life. And in that context, they're not necessarily seeing that putting a ballot paper into a box is going to change their lives. And I don't think there's a single party that would put its hand up and say, we've got the youth vote. Yeah. The people who come closest to claiming it are the EFF. And that, in a sense, is because the politics of spectacle, the threats, the latent threats of violence and the overt threats of violence against individuals, such as journalists and Pravin Gordhan and others, those are quite attractive to, if you like, a generation that is both locked out of an economy that is particularly white in its social capital, it should be added, but locked out of any other opportunity. But that said, the EFF is not polling above 10%. And so the getting the youth support is one thing. Turning it into votes, I think, is a very different thing, particularly when young people don't register.
And how much of an impact do you think current processes, things like court cases, what we're seeing coming out of the state capture inquiry this morning, if you look at the newspapers, the president's son, his name coming up now with that whole Bosasa scandal as well. How much of an impact, because those processes will still be ongoing. They wouldn't be resolved by the time we go to vote on the 8th of May. Do you think that those kinds of issues are going to be sort of floating around there for voters to say, you know, we have this amount of suspicion, and like you say, the mistrust is still there? Do you see that these processes are going to have quite an impact on how they vote?
Yes, and I think it's up to each citizen to decide how you interpret that impact. So on the one hand, there are, I mean, I haven't got enough fingers to keep up with all the commissions of inquiry that are going, and each of them is showing us the very worst side of human nature and the complete impunity of the ANC under the former president in power. It's not restricted to them. The private sector is doing a dramatic, playing a dramatic role in there as well. And we know that at sub-national level, there's scandals in Tshwane and all sorts of places where the ANC is not in power, which doesn't take away from the fact that the majority of what we're seeing is coming out under the ANC's watch. On the other hand, there's not a single president in the world that I'm aware of. And let's just be clear that this kind of corruption, certainly the private sector corruption, is happening everywhere. I mean, if we lifted the hood and looked at the French economy or the American economy or the British economy, you'd see the same levels of collusion and nonsense going on, I suspect. But no president other than Ramaphosa has said, okay, let's have a look. Let's let due process take its course. And if these people are found guilty, let them go to jail. And so it really is, you know, in the voters' purview to say, well, either what they're showing me is an ANC that I just cannot stomach, frankly, or the ANC has well, certainly under Ramaphosa, this ANC seems to have the capacity to change, and so I will give it the benefit of the doubt. And I think that is the choice that people have to make for themselves. I think at some level, what we're seeing with ANC figures coming in around the mid-50s, heading towards the low 60s nationally, and about 50-54 in Gauteng, is people who are kind of saying, I'll hold my nose, but I'll vote ANC. So I don't particularly like the party and what it's done, but I like Ramaphosa and where it's going. So this ANC is a kind of work in progress. Okay. And so I will literally, well, not literally, but I will metaphorically hold my nose from the stink from the past, but look with some optimism at where it may go in the future. Okay. But that's not going to be an argument that persuades everyone by any means. As I say, I think it comes down to how you look at what's coming out into the public domain.
All right, thanks very much for that, Professor David Everatt. He's from the Wits School of Governance, joining us this morning, just giving us a sense of what people will be looking for when they vote on the 8th of May.